So, good day everyone. I am Micaella and together with my partners, we are the reporter of Chapter 15, Sale and Leaseback. So, let's get started by knowing the definition ng ating transaction na sale and leaseback. Well, according to IFRS 16, this is an arrangement whereby one party sells an asset to another party and then immediately leases the asset. So, para mas ma-visualize natin kung ano ba yung sale and leaseback, for example, we have this businesswoman A, pangalanan lang natin siyang si Ganda, and meron siyang equipment na gusto niyang ibenta dito kay businesswoman B. Pangalanan lang din natin siyang Sexy. Si Ganda, meron siyang equipment na gustong ibenta kay Sexy. Si Ganda natin dito ay siya yung ating tinatawag na seller kasi siya yung nagbenta ng equipment kay Sexy. So, si Sexy natin dito, siya ang tinatawag nating buyer. And this is the transaction of sale. Pero itong si seller o itong ating si Ganda, inupahan niya pabalik yung equipment na ibinenta niya kay Sexy. So that's why nagkaroon tayo ng leaseback. And from that leaseback, itong ating si seller, nagkaroon siya ng bagong persona. Si Ganda natin, naging si Lessee. And etong ating si Sexy ay naging si Lessor. So, bakit nga ba ginagawa ito ni seller? Meron po siyang tatlong dahilan kung bakit niya yung ginagawa. Ang number one is kapos po si seller or he or she is experiencing cash flow or financing problem. Pangalawa po, ay mayroon palang tax advantages in such arrangement in lessee's jurisdiction. Kaya pala gustong gawin ito ni seller kasi meron pala siyang tax advantages na makukuha kapag ginawa niya ang sale and leaseback. Pangatlo po and last is gusto niya lang pong ma-avoid yung burden of paying the executory cost attendant to the asset such as repairs, insurance, and taxes. Gusto niya lang naman pong makaiwas dun sa mga executory cost na kaakibat ng asset na yon. So, in the next slide is the important consideration. Ito yung dapat nating tandaan para makonsider natin na ang isang transaction is a sale and leaseback. First is dapat meron po tayong sale and second is dapat meron po tayong lease agreement or meron po tayong lease. So, alam naman po natin yung sale is kapag naibenta or nagkaroon ng pagbebenta. And kapag naman po lease, nagkaroon ng upa. So, kailangan lang natin i-take note na there is no physical transfer of asset dapat in a sale and leaseback. Kasi po, ang ating physical transfer of asset ay may kaakibat na mortgage or sangla. Kaya po, magkaiba ito sa sale and leaseback. Pangalawa po nating dapat tandaan, the lease rent and the sale price are usually interdependent and negotiated as a package. Yun pong ating binabayad na upa at saka po yung sale price ng mismong asset natin ay nakadepende po sila sa isa't isa pero pwede din po silang in-negotiated as a package ng isang seller-lessee and ng ating buyer-lessor. So, para mas maintindihan po natin, we have this illustration. Dito sa ating illustration, ipapakita natin ano nga ba yung mga journal entries natin if there is a sale and leaseback transaction. So, first, let's read the illustration. At the beginning of the current year, an entity sold a machinery with a remaining life of 10 years for 2 million pesos, which is equal to the fair value of the machinery. So, the entity immediately leased the machinery back for 1 year at the prevailing annual rental of 300 pesos. The machinery had a carrying amount of 1,800,000 pesos and net of accumulated depreciation of 1,200,000 pesos. So, ang atin pong para sa ating books ni seller and lessee, o yung atin pong kanina si Ganda, ang nasa kanya pong books ay debit cash of 2 million pesos. Ito po yung price or nung ating machinery, yung fair value po ng ating machinery. At ang next is debit the accumulated depreciation of 1,200,000 pesos na given naman po dito sa ating problem. And then credit the machinery of 3 million pesos. Bakit po naging 3 million pesos? Kasi po ang atin pong machinery has a cost of 3 million pesos. Paano po natin nakuha yung cost niya? Ito pong carrying amount natin na 1,800,000 pesos and ito pong ating accumulated depreciation na 1,200,000 pesos. Inad lang po natin sila sa isa't isa to get the cost of the machinery. Next is credit gain on right transferred natin na 200,000 pesos. So, paano po natin siya nakuha? Etong pong ating fair value na 2 million pesos, ilalas lang po natin yung carrying amount ng ating machinery which is 1,800,000 pesos to get the gain on right transferred po natin. And this journal entries is to record the sale. Sa books pa rin po tayo ni seller-lessee. Ito naman po is to record the annual rental payment, which is to debit the rent expense with 300,000 pesos. Nabanggit naman po siya sa problem natin kanina. And to credit the cash of 300,000 pesos also. So, paano naman po sa books ni buyer-lessor? Ano po yung mga journal entries natin? I-debit po natin yung machinery na 2 million pesos. Ito po yung fair value niya. And then, credit cash na 2 million pesos. It is to record the purchase of the machinery. To record the annual rental naman, magkaiba po sila, which is, dito po, i-debit natin yung cash na 100,000 pesos and i-credit naman natin yung rental income na 100,000 pesos. Next one is to record the depreciation. We debit depreciation for 200,000 pesos and accumulated depreciation of 200,000 pesos. Nakuha po natin siya by the fair value po natin na 2 million pesos. I-divide po natin siya sa 10 years remaining useful life ng ating machinery. Ang next naman natin is this illustration. Pakitandaan lang po ito. Pwede niyo pong i-post ang ating video para mas maintindihan niyo pa po ang mga next nating discussion. Ito pong illustration na ito ay gagamitin natin para sa next discussions natin. Yung sale price niya po is at fair value. On January 1, 2021, an entity sold an equipment with remaining life of 10 years and immediately leased it back for 4 years at the prevailing market rental. So, yung given po natin is sale price at fair value, 6 million pesos. Carrying amount of the equipment, 4,500,000 pesos. Annual rental payable at the end of each year, 800,000 pesos. Implicit interest rate of 10%. Present value of ordinary annuity of 1 at 10% for 4 periods is 3.17. So, next one is, alam ko naman natalakay na ng mga nakaraang discussion yung about sa lease liability. For refreshment po, ito po yung present value of the lease payments natin. Ngayon, dito sa ating sale and leaseback transaction, paano nga ba natin minimeasure yung lease liability natin? So, to measure the lease liability, we have that the seller-lessee shall account for the leaseback as a finance lease, and the lease liability is measured at the present value of rental payments. So, tatandaan po natin yung lease liability natin, minimeasured siya at the present value of rental payments. Tapos, ang atin pong seller-lessee ay nag-a-account ng leaseback as a finance lease. Ang finance lease accounting po ay na-discuss na sa mga nakaraang chapters. So, I presume na alam niyo na po ito. So, dito sa ating example, sa ating pong problem kanina, paano po natin makukuha yung present value of rentals o yung ating lease liability? So, una muna is yung annual rental payable natin kanina at the end of each year na 800,000 pesos. I-multiply po natin siya sa present value of ordinary annuity of 1 at 10% for 4 periods, which is 3.17. Makukuha po natin yung present value of rentals, which is 2,536,000 pesos. So, yun po yung ating lease liability. So, paano naman po yung subsequent measurement ng ating lease liability? Ito po ay minimeasured through amortization na po natin. So, here, in this table, makikita nyo po yung amortization ng ating present value of rentals from each year or hanggang sa ating 2024. So, ayan po, ang ating present value ay naging from 2,536,000 pesos, naging 1,989,600 pesos, and etc. So, ngayon po, dahil alam na natin kung paano i-measure yung ating lease liability, magpo-proceed na po tayo sa measurement of right of use asset. Ito naman po yung karapatan ni seller-lessee to use the asset over the life of the lease. So, I think na-discuss na din to sa mga previous chapter. So, hindi na po natin pahahabain pa. If ever na gusto nyo pong mas malaman pa or mas detailed na discussion about the right of use asset, balikan nyo na lang po yung ating mga nakaraang discussion sa mga nakaraang chapters. So, ngayon, ang tanong ng bayan, paano nga ba natin siya i-measure? From our leaseback. So, connected na siya dito sa ating topic, which is sale and leaseback. So, ang ating IFRS 16 paragraph 100 ay is nasaan? Ukol dito. Sabi niya, seller-lessee shall measure the right of use asset arising from the leaseback at the proportion of the previous carrying amount of the asset in the relation to the right of use retained by the seller-lessee. So, eto daw po palang ating right of use asset ay dapat i-measure natin at the proportion lang po ng ating previous carrying amount of the asset. So, ang formula po natin is cost of right of use asset is equals to present value of lease liability over the fair value of the asset multiplied by our carrying amount. So, ang ating pong present value of lease liability over fair value of the asset, ito po yung tinutukoy na proportion of the previous carrying amounts. Yung ating pong base dito is yung carrying amount ng ating asset. So, para mas maintindihan po natin, here is an example. Ito po ay nakalaan pa rin po doon po sa ating illustration kanina, which is yung ating carrying amount ng ating equipment is 4,500,000 pesos, and yung ating pong sale price at fair value is 6 million pesos. So, yung ating cost of right of use asset using our formula kanina, yung ating pong present value of lease liability na nakuha na natin kanina is 2,536,000 pesos over 6 million multiplied by 4,500,000 pesos. Makukuha po natin yung cost of right of use asset, which is 1,902,000 pesos. Proceed naman tayo kapag meron ng gain or loss na to be recognized. So, hindi sa lahat ng pagkakataon, yung ating asset ay naibebenta ni seller-lessee na pantay or equal doon sa fair value. Minsan kasi merong mas mataas and meron minsan naman na mas mababa lang na ibebenta. So, that's why ang ating IFRS paragraph 100, the gain or loss that pertains to the right retained by the seller-lessee is not recognized. So, yung dun sa gain or loss na nagpa-pertain dun sa right retained by the seller-lessee, hindi po natin siya i-recognize. Bagkus, ito po ay the proportion of the initial lease liability in relation to the fair value of the asset lamang. So, what if naman dun naman po tayo sa right transfer to the buyer-lessor? So, yung gain or loss that pertains to the right transfer to the buyer-lessor is recognized. So, ang pinagkaiba po nila, yung right returned by the seller-lessee, hindi po natin siya nare-recognize yung gain or loss doon. And kapag naman po yung gain or loss ay kapag sa right transfer to the buyer-lessor, i-recognize po natin siya. So, ang atin pong formula to get the right transfer to the buyer-lessor is equals to the fair value of the asset minus the initial lease liability. So, para po magkaroon tayo ng further knowledge about this is the illustration. Ilalas lang po natin yung 4,500,000 pesos sa ating 6 million sale price, makukuha po natin yung total gain na 1,500,000 pesos. So, yung right retained by the seller-lessee na equal dun sa lease liability na nakuha natin, which is 2,536,000 pesos. Ililas lang po natin yon dun sa ating fair value para makuha yung rights transferred to the buyer-lessor. Ito po ay yung 3,464,000 pesos. So, yung gain to be recognized po natin is 866,000 pesos and yung gain not to be recognized po natin is 634,000 pesos. So, di ba kapag operating lease model yung ginamit natin sa transaction, yung gain is recognized in full. Pero kapag naman po, finance lease model yung ginamit natin, yung gain on right transferred po here is, ito lang po siya. Ito lang pong gain to be recognized. Ito lang po yung i-recognize po natin sa finance lease model. So, paano ba siya natin nakuha? Yung ating pong gain to be recognized ay may formula na total gain. Ito pong ating total gain na 1,500,000 pesos. I-multiply po natin yan sa right transferred natin to the buyer-lessor na nakuha, which is 3,464,000 pesos over the fair value of 6 million pesos. So, makukuha po natin doon is 866,000 pesos. Samantala, yung gain na to be recognized naman po is pwede naman po siyang total gain less gain to be recognized na nakuha natin kanina, or kung gusto niyo naman pong mas pahirapan pang inyong sarili, ito po ay yung total gain po natin na 1,500,000 pesos, i-multiply po natin siya sa right retained by the seller-lessee, which is 2,536,000 pesos over the fair value po natin, which is 6 million pesos. So, kagaya ng sabi ko kanina, pag finance lease model, ang i-recognize lang po nating gain on right transferred is, yun lang pong gain to be recognized na nakuha natin kanina, which is eto po, which is our 866,000 pesos. To record the sale and leaseback, mag-debit po tayo ng cash, which is 6 million pesos, and debit right of use asset, which is 1,902,000 pesos. Then credit equipment for 4,500,000 pesos. And our lease liability po na nakuha kanina, which is 2,536,000 pesos. And atin yung gain po natin na nakuha kanina to be recognized, which is 866,000 pesos. Take note na kaya po ganito yung ating gain on right transferred because ang atin pong ginamit na model in accounting is the finance lease model. So, next transaction is to record the annual rental for the first year. We will just debit the interest expense of 253,600 pesos and the lease liability of 546,000 pesos, which is nakuha po natin yung interest expense by multiplying the implicit rate by our lease liability, which is 2,536,000 pesos. So, i-debit po natin yung interest expense and yung ating lease liability with this amount, and then i-credit naman po natin yung cash natin with 800,000. So, to record naman po yung the depreciation ng ating right of use asset, magkakaroon po tayo ng debit depreciation. Makukuha po natin siya by dividing yung ating cost of right to use asset by the useful life po natin na 4 years. So, ang makukuha po natin is 475,500 pesos. So, ang accumulated depreciation po natin, i-credit natin by the same amount. So, how about naman po sa books ni buyer-lessor? In the books po ni buyer and lessor, kung ano po ang gagawin natin sa ating lease accounting, yun din po ang ating gagawin for this account. So, ito pong operating lease model na sinasabi dito, I assume na ito po ay na-discuss na din sa chapter 12 ng ating book. So, kung gusto niyo pa pong balikan iyon, pwede niyo naman pong balikan muna bago po ulit kayo magpatuloy sa ating video. So, accordingly, the buyer-lessor shall apply the operating lease model because the lease term is 4 years or only 40% of the useful life of the underlying asset. So, 40% lang po useful life ng ating underlying asset. So, ang gagamitin po natin is yung operating lease model. Moreover, the present value of rentals of 2,536,000 pesos is less than the 90% of the fair value of 6 million. Dahil less than nga po siya sa 90% ng fair value natin, ang gagamitin po nating model is the operating lease. So, ang atin po journal entries is yung debit equipment by 6 million, credit cash by 6 million also. It is to record the purchase of the underlying asset natin. To record naman po the annual rental, we will just debit cash by 800,000 pesos and credit rent income by 800,000 pesos. Next is to record the annual depreciation of our equipment. I-debit is yung depreciation account, which is nakuha po natin by dividing the useful life po na 10 years sa ating cost of right of use asset. Yung depreciation po natin with the amount of 600,000 pesos. And then credit the accumulated depreciation of 600,000 pesos also. Now, paano naman kapag yung ating sale price is above the fair value? Naibenta natin siya ng mas mataas kaysa sa fair value ng ating underlying asset. So, yung ating pong IFRS 16 paragraph 100, nag-provide po siya na kapag yung sale price does not equal the fair value of the underlying asset, the seller-lessee shall make adjustment to measure the sale price at fair value. So, magkakaroon na po ng adjustment para doon sa sale price at fair value. Yung any excess daw po dun sa ating sale price over the fair value shall be accounted for as additional financing provided by the buyer-lessor to seller-lessee. Yung excess daw po dun sa sale price over the fair value natin, ito po yung magiging accounted po siya as additional financing. So, para po mas maintindihan, here is an illustration. So, on January 1, 2021, an entity sold a building with remaining life of 20 years and immediately leased it back for 5 years. Yung sale price po natin is 20 million. Yung fair value po ng ating building is 18 million. Now, yung carrying amount po ng ating building is 10,800,000 pesos. And yung annual rental payable po natin at the end of each year is 1,500,000 pesos. Tapos, yung ating pong implicit interest rate ay given na din, which is 12%. And then, yung ating pong present value of an ordinary annuity of 1 at 12% for 5 periods, which is 3.60. Kukunin po muna natin yung ating lease liability, which is nakuha po natin by multiplying yung ating pong annual rental payable at the end of each year na 1,500,000 pesos by our present value of an ordinary annuity of 1 at 12% for 5 periods, which is 3.60. So, makukuha po natin yung ating lease liability, which is 5,400,000. Now, para makuha po natin yung adjusted total gain natin doon po sa ating nangyari transaction, which is yung sale price po natin is above the fair value. Una po muna natin kukunin is yung excess sale over the fair value, which is sale price lang po minus natin yung fair value of our building. Makukuha po natin siya as 2 million pesos. Now po, ay kukunin naman po natin yung present value of lease liability related to rentals. Paano po natin siya makukuha? Yung present value of our lease liability po kanina na 5,400,000 pesos, ililess po natin itong additional financing equal to excess sale price. So, dahil nga po meron pa tayong excess sale price, kagaya po ng sabi natin kanina, magiging additional financing po siya. Kaya po ililess po natin siya doon sa ating present value ng ating lease liability para makuha po natin yung present value ng ating lease liability related doon sa rentals natin. Makukuha po natin is 3,400,000 pesos. Now po, ang kukunin naman po natin is yung cost of right of use asset. So, para po makuha yung cost of right of use asset, yung atin pong present value of lease liability related to rentals over 18 million natin, which is the fair value, multiplied po natin siya sa ating carrying amount. Ang makukuha po natin is 2,040,000 pesos. Now, ang atin pong kukunin is yung adjusted total gain na po. So, yung fair value natin, ililess po natin yung carrying amount, makukuha po natin yung adjusted total gain, which is 7,200,000 pesos. Now, next is yung right transfer to buyer-lessor naman. So, para naman po makuha natin yung right transfer to buyer-lessor, o yung ating fair value ng ating building is 18 million, ililess po natin yung ating right returned by the seller-lessee equal to lease liability, excluding excess sale price po natin. makukuha po natin yung right transfer to buyer-lessor na 14,600,000 pesos. So, para makuha po natin yung gain to be recognized and gain not to be recognized, syempre kailangan nga nating makuha yung right transferred and right returned. Now, nakuha po natin siya. Yung gain to be recognized po natin is yung right transferred to buyer-lessor na 14,600,000 pesos over 18,000 multiplied by 7,200,000 pesos. Ang makukuha po natin is 5,840,000 pesos. Ngayon naman po, dun sa gain not to be recognized na 1,360,000 pesos, nakuha po natin siya by the right returned by the seller-lessee equal to lease liability over 18,000 multiplied by 7,200,000. After natin makuha yung gain to be recognized and gain not to be recognized, kukunin na po natin yung adjusted total gain, which is 7,200,000 pesos. Now, ano nga ba yung journal entries natin? Unang katapos ng journal entries, to record the sale and leaseback, ide-debit po muna natin yung cash, tapos yung ating right of use asset, then credit the equipment, lease liability, and gain on right transfer. So, yung ating cash is 20 million pesos, at yung ating pong right of use asset is 2,040,000. Tapos, yung ating pong equipment is, yung amount is 10,800,000 pesos. Yung ating pong lease liability is 5,400,000 pesos. And yung ating pong gain on right transferred will be 5,840,000 pesos. So, yung to record the annual rental po natin for the first year, yung ating ide-debit is yung interest expense, and yung ating lease liability, yung ating pong interest expense ay nakuha natin by multiplying the ating implicit interest rate of 12% multiplied by our lease liability of 5,400,000 pesos kanina, and makukuha po nating amount is 648,000 pesos. Yung ating pong lease liability na i-debit natin is 852,000 pesos. Now, yung ating pong i-credit is yung ating cash with the value of 1,500,000 pesos. Now, to record the annual depreciation ulit of the right of use asset natin, debit depreciation with 408,000 pesos and credit accumulated depreciation with the same amount. Nakuha po natin siya by dividing 240,000 pesos over the useful life of 5 years. Now, dumako naman po tayo sa books of buyer and lessor. Gagamit din tayo dito ng operating lease model because the lease term is 5 years only, 25% of the 20-year useful life of the underlying asset. So, 25% lang po siya ng 20-year useful life. Moreover, the present value of the lease liability related to rentals of 3,400,000 pesos is less than the 90% of the fair value of 18 million. So, ang gagamitin po natin is operating lease model. Now, ang atin pong journal entries would be to record the purchase of the building with debit building of 18 million pesos and debit financial asset of 2 million pesos, then credit cash for 20 million pesos. Now, to record the annual rental related lease, we should debit cash with 944,444 pesos and credit rent income with the same amount. Now, to record the annual rental related to financing, we debit cash with 55,556 pesos and credit financial asset with 315,556 pesos and credit interest income for 240,000 pesos. Now, to record the annual depreciation po ng ating equipment, depreciation would be debited for 900,000. Accumulated depreciation would be credited for the same amount. Nakuha po natin siya through yung ating pong building of 18 million divided by the 20 years life, and nakuha po natin ay 900,000 pesos.
Let's go now to the allocation of annual rental. The annual rental of 1,500,000 is partly a rental income and partly payment of the financial asset. So in order for us to compute the total present value, we'll sum up the present value of rental income and financial asset, which is 3,400,000 plus 2 million. So that's 5,400,000. For the fraction, it's 3,400 over the 5,400,000. And for the financial asset, 2,000 over 5,400,000. For the total allocation, rental income 944,444 plus the financial asset 555,556. That would be 1,500,000. We'll see here the amortization related to the financial asset. So on January 1, 2021, the present value is 2 million. So at the end of the term, which is at the end of 2025, the present values should be 0. So paano ba yan na-compute? So on December 31, 2021, the payment is 555,556. Then we'll deduct the interest income, which is 12% times 2 million. That would be 240,000. Then the principal payment is 315,556. So as we can see on the table, the present value on January 1, 2021 is 2 million. Then the principal payment, ibabawas natin yon. That would be 1,684,444. After knowing the sale price above fair value, let's go now to sale price below fair value. On January 1, 2021, an entity sold an equipment with remaining life of 8 years and lease it back for 5 years. So the sale price is 5 million, fair value of the equipment is 6 million, and the carrying amount of the equipment worth 4,800,000. The annual rental payable at the end of each year is 900,000. With an implicit rate of 8%, the present value of an ordinary annuity is 3.99. So, the table of amortization. Ang present value of rentals is 3,591,000. So, that's 900,000 times the present value, which is 3.99. January 1, 2021, the present value is 3,591,000. Then we'll get the 8% interest, 287,280. So the principal payment now is 612,720. So gagawin natin yung process na yon until maging 0 na ang present value at the end of 2025. Now, the measurement of right-of-use asset. Under IFRS 16, paragraph 101 provides that if the sale does not equal the fair value of the asset, the seller-lessee shall make adjustments to measure the sale price at fair value. So, that's very self-explanatory. If the sale price is below the fair value, the difference is accounted for as prepayment. So, dahil mas mababa nga yung sale price natin kasi sa fair value, i-account natin yung prepayment of rental. So, let's have an illustration. The fair value of the equipment is 6 million and the sale price is 5 million. So there's an excess fair value over sale price. That's 1 million. The present value of rentals, which is 3,591,000, as you can see on the table, excess fair value or the prepayment of rental is 1 million. I-add natin yan. Then the lease liability is now 4,591,000. As it is given, the carrying amount of the equipment is 4,800,000 and the fair value of that is 6 million. In order for us to compute the cost of right-of-use asset, that would be 4,591,000 divided by the 6 million times the fair value, which is 4,800,000. So it will give us 3,672,800. So, gain to be recognized. So the fair value of the equipment is 6 million and the carrying amount of the equipment is 4,800,000. So the total gain is 1,200,000. And since the fair value of that equipment is 6 million, the right retained by seller-lessee equal to lease liability, including the excess fair value, is 4,591,000. Ibabawas natin yun doon sa fair value ng equipment, so that would be 1,409,000. That's the right transferred to buyer or the lessor. Now, how much is the gain to be recognized? That's 281,800 because the right transferred to buyer-lessor divided by 6 million times 1,200,000 and gain not to be recognized is the right retained by seller-lessee, which is 4,591,000 divided by 6 million times 1,200,000, and that's 918,200, and the total gain is 1,200,000 pesos.
We will now proceed to the journal entries sa books of seller-lessee. Okay, so number 1, we will record the sale and leaseback. To do that, we will first record the cash, which is yung sale price natin of 5 million pesos, along with the right of use asset na nakuha natin as we lease back the equipment. So it cost 3,672,800. We will credit the carrying amount of the equipment for 4,800,000. Then meron tayong computed lease liability of 3,591,000. Meron tayong gain on right transferred for 218,800. So number 2, we will record the annual rental for the first year. Unang entry natin is yung sa interest expense, which is 287,280 pesos, which is nakuha natin siya by getting the 8% of 3,591,000 na lease liability natin. We will record the lease liability or the principal na na-derive from subtracting the cash payment of 900,000 and the interest expense na 287,280 pesos. Okay, so we will credit the cash payment of 900,000. So, third transaction natin is yung depreciation natin ng right of use asset. So, since meron na tayong cost of right of use asset, which is 3,672,800 pesos, we will divide it by 5 years, which is yung lease term natin. We will have 734,560 pesos annual depreciation. So, punta naman tayo sa mga entries sa books ng buyer-lessor. Si buyer-lessor, gagamit siya ng operating lease model. Kasi yung lease term natin is 5 years lang and mas mababa siya sa 75% ng 8 years na useful life ng underlying asset natin. At the same time, yung present value natin is 4,591,000, which is mas mababa siya sa 90% na fair value, which is 6 million, para masabi siyang substantially all. So we will use operating lease model. Okay, so first, i-record natin yung purchase niya as counterpart nung sales natin kanina sa book ng seller-lessee. Price natin is 5 million. We will record the equipment for 5 million and cash for 5 million. Number 2, i-record natin yung annual rentals. Okay, so as mentioned niya kanina, ang annual rentals natin ay 900,000. So we will record the cash for 900,000, and since naka-operating lease tayo is magke-credit tayo ng rent income na 900,000 pesos. Third transaction natin to record the annual depreciation of the equipment. So sa seller-lessee, nag-record tayo ng annual depreciation for right of use asset, pero since tayo ngayon yung bumili ng equipment, ang i-record natin is annual depreciation ng equipment. So we have the sale price or yung cost 5 million divided by 8 years, we will have 625,000 annual depreciation. Okay, so we're done with this illustration. So punta naman tayo sa another illustration, which is sale price at fair value with loss. Okay, so here's the illustration. On January 1, 2021, an entity sold a building with remaining life of 25 years and immediately leased it back for 3 years. Ang sales price natin is 10 million. Carrying amount ng equipment natin is 12 million. Meron tayong annual rental na payable at the end of each year for 500,000. Implicit interest rate of 8%. Present value of ordinary annuity of 1 at 8% for 3 periods is 2.58. Okay, so we will go sa table of amortization natin. Kukunin muna natin yung present value ng mga rentals natin. Okay, so to do that, yung annual rental natin, which is 500,000, okay, so multiply natin siya sa present value of ordinary annuity of 1, which is 2.58, and we will get 1,290,000. Okay, so ito yung present value natin ngayon ng rentals. So punta naman tayo sa table of amortization. So initial present value natin is 1,290,000 as computed dito sa taas. Payment natin, which is yung 500,000 na annual payment nga ng rent. Kukunin natin yung 8% interest rate ng present value natin, which is 103,000 200 pesos. So, ito yung interest natin for this year. Okay, so to get the principal, we will subtract the interest from our annual payment na 500,000. So, we will get 396,800 pesos. Then, yung nakuha nating principal, ito yung naibawas natin sa present value. So, we will subtract principal from the present value. We will get 893,200. Cycle lang siya, dire-diretso lang siya with the same process hanggang mag-zero out yung present value natin at the last term. Punta naman tayo sa pagme-measure natin ng right of use asset. So, pagme-measure naman natin ng right of use asset, kukunin natin yung present value ng lease liability, which we can see here, 1,290,000. We have the present value of the lease, i-divide natin siya sa fair value, which is 10 million. Then, i-multiply natin siya sa carrying amount of the building, 12 million. We will get 1,548,000 as our cost of the right of use asset. So, dito naman tayo sa loss recognition. Okay, so to compute for the loss, we will have to subtract the carrying amount from the sale price. So, 10 million minus 12 million, meron tayong total loss of 2 million. Pero itong total loss na to is hindi natin siya i-recognize lahat. Ang i-recognize lang natin ay yung rights na na-transfer sa buyer-lessor. Punta muna tayo dito sa may fair value of the building, which is 10 million. So, meron tayong rights retained by seller-lessee, which is ito ay yung lease liability natin, 1,290,000. So, i-subtract natin siya dun sa fair value natin na 10 million. Then, we will get the right transferred to the buyer-lessor. Okay, so gaya ng sabi ko kanina, itong right transferred to buyer-lessor lang ang i-recognize natin as a loss. So, kukunin natin yung part niya dito sa total loss na 2 million. To do that, we will divide the right transferred, which is 8,710,000 dito sa ating fair value of the building, which is 10 million. So, 8,710,000 divided by 10 million. Then, i-multiply natin siya sa total loss natin na 2 million. So, we will get 1,742,000 na loss to be recognized. So, we will do the same thing sa rights retained by the seller-lessee, pero this time, hindi na natin siya recognize sa journal entries natin. So, punta na tayo sa journal entries. Doon muna tayo sa books ng seller-lessee. First, as usual, we will record the sale and leaseback. So, sale price natin, 10 million. We will record cash. Along with that is the right of use asset, which is we computed to be 1,548,000. Okay, so dito natin nakuha yon. 1,548,000. Punta naman tayo dito sa loss on right transferred. Okay, so if you remember, ito yung sa kaninang slide, which is 1,742,000 na loss na i-recognize natin. To credit naman is equipment for 12 million, which is yung carrying amount natin. Then, lease liability of 1,290,000, which is dito natin siya nakuha sa kinumpute natin kaninang present value of rentals. Going back, number 2 natin, next entry natin is annual rental for the first year. Balik ulit tayo dun sa table of amortization. Okay, so punta tayo sa table of amortization, we will see na ang interest natin is 103,200 and principal of 396,800 for the first year. Okay, so we will record those values here. Then credit cash, yung annual payment natin na 500,000. Third transaction naman natin is annual depreciation of the right of use asset. Okay, so meron na tayong value of right of use which is 1.548 million. Then i-divide natin siya sa 3 years na lease term natin. So we will have an annual depreciation of 516,000. So proceed na tayo sa books ng buyer-lessor. First, we will record purchase. So, sale price natin is 10 million. Second entry natin, we will record the annual rental. So, gumamit din tayo dito ng operating lease. Rent income tayo, 500,000 pesos. Then, lastly, last entry natin is to record the annual depreciation of the building. Okay, so yung cost natin, as we can see here, 10 million. Then, i-divide natin siya sa total useful life niya for 25 years. Okay, so we will have annual depreciation of 400,000 pesos.
Now, dumako naman po tayo sa transfer of asset is not a sale. Paano naman po kapag hindi siya sale? Parang nagkaroon ng transfer of asset. So, yung ating pong IFRS 16 paragraph 103 provides that if the transfer of an asset by the seller-lessee does not satisfy the requirements for the recognition of the sale, una, the seller-lessee shall continue to recognize the transferred assets and shall recognize the financial liability equal to the transfer from proceeds. So, yung atin pong seller-lessee ay kailangan pong ipagpatuloy yung pagre-recognize ng ating transferred assets. And i-recognize din po yung financial liability equal from the proceeds po natin or sa nakuha po natin. Samantala, yung ating naman buyer-lessor shall not recognize the transferred assets but shall recognize a financial asset equal to the transfer proceeds. So, yung pinagkaiba po kapag seller-lessee, ang nire-recognize is financial liability and din naman po sa buyer-lessor natin, ang nire-recognize is yung financial asset. So, para mas madipen pa po natin kapag dun sa ating seller-lessee, yung entry po natin is to debit the cash and credit lease liability for the transfer proceeds. So, the rental or lease payment is accounted for as part payment of interest expense and part payment of the principal lease liability. So, the interest is computed based on the implicit interest rate using the effective interest method. Now, doon naman po tayo sa book ni buyer-lessor. So, yung atin pong entry there is to debit the lease receivable and to credit the cash. So, the rental or lease payment from the seller-lessee is accounted for as a part collection of interest income and a part collection of principal lease liability. So, part collection po ng interest income and part collection siya ng principal lease receivable.